Congress investigating whether or not Biden's aides also covered up his decline. So will Americans finally get some answers? Sure, hope so. Attorney at Judicial Watch, Christina Bobb. All right, Christina, I feel I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I feel like the best way to test this is just charge one of these people with something, see what happens, make them prove that he was competent and he signed that pardon.
I love that idea. I love Ed Martin. I love everything about all of this because the logical conclusion of this is the only reason you would do an investigation is because you intend to challenge it. I mean, I say that, but then we see the government all the time step up and say they're investigating something and then nothing ever happens. So I hope this is not that. I hope, knowing Ed, he's fantastic. And I suppose that this could potentially lead to just that. Let's indict somebody and see if it holds up in court.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the Democrats did to Republicans. They indicted grandma for praying outside of an abortion clinic. All right. The other thing, too, is like everyone's talking about his last few days in office. Like, I am still hung up on his entire time in office. He was campaigned from a basement. We saw him for like 7.5 minutes in an entire presidential election cycle.
Well, they've already admitted in the Robert Hur report that he wasn't competent to stand trial. So if he's not competent to stand trial, then he's not competent to run the country. Mm-hmm. So they've already acknowledged that. I think I hate to call it a game, but the game here is to see how closely Ed Martin and the Department of Justice can piece together exactly what happened and who had control. Because we all know it wasn't Joe Biden. So who was it and who was making these decisions? Well,
here's the other question, too, is you've got the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. Did Joe Biden do that? And what is the process for challenging her and her seat?
Yeah, that's all of the nominations, right? They're all in question. So I think that's a legitimate question. That one's a little bit harder because she's been in office for so long and President Biden has held out that he understands that she's the Supreme Court justice. So that one's probably a little tougher. But on these pardon issues and probably some of the executive orders and some of these kind of lesser issues, I think they absolutely need to challenge it and go after it because it's clear that Joe Biden was not the one making these decisions. Yeah, pretty clear, or on anything. So let's go over to Alina Habba, all right? She's got some stuff going on there. The Newark mayor that she had arrested, then charged, and then dropped charges, that's a Raz Bakar or whatever. He's suing Alina Habba's office over his arrest last month while he was protesting outside the detention facility. Does this go anywhere? It's interesting to see, and I have to, in interest of full disclosure, I am facing my own criminal charges at the moment, and I have a very, very strong bias towards government or against government overreach. And so I take this allegation very seriously and consider it seriously. Nobody should be arrested. No one's constitutional rights should be violated. And it needs to, at the very least, be considered. So, it comes down to whether or not there was probable cause. I did read his complaint today, and he lays out a case. But, of course, we haven't heard the other side yet. And who knows what Alina knew, when she knew it. And, of course, she's got prosecutorial immunity as well. And so that raises a whole other issue. So probably not going to go anywhere, but I do think it needs to be taken very seriously. And especially on the conservative side, we can't cry about them doing this to us when we do it. So I think it's a good issue. I think it's something we need to look into and remain impartial. Not to be unfair here, but you were charged with crimes in a state that you never went to. So, yours is a little bit different, but whatever. Different. All right. So the suspect in the Colorado terror attack over the weekend actually backed off his plan to kill a group of he called Zionists earlier. And so, his wife and all 5 of his children have been arrested by ICE. And I'm assuming they might also be here illegally or maybe tied to that visa. I don't know how this system works. Can we get rid of them? We should be able to, as long as President Trump gets permission from the courts to do so. And I say that only somewhat sarcastically. These are the type of cases that we used to highlight for the public to see, and we'd have public outrage going, oh, my gosh, we need to remove these people. And now, for whatever reason, it's like people are getting hard to this issue. So President Trump needs to continue doing what he's doing. Tom Homan, ICE, everyone needs to continue doing what they're doing. And eventually, I think we'll get there. Yeah, you can come in, no courts stop you from coming in, but we can't get him out of here. Real quick, DOJ confirming this Romanian man who pled guilty to a years-long swatting hoax. He was the guy who swatted like Cat Turd and all these other people. I mean, this is just, he should be charged with attempted murder. Yeah, I think the charge is very light. I'm grateful they found him, quite honestly, because the swatting had been getting really bad and going on for a very long time. Hopefully he's the only one, or, there's not many, or this deters other people from doing it. But absolutely, and I know Joe Pags was one. I think you've had him on your show. I've seen him on the network before. And he was one that it very much was like an attempted murder situation where he's very Second Amendment, pro-Second Amendment. And it could have resulted in, death by police firing. So, I think attempted murder could have been on the table.
Yeah. All right. Christina, Bobb, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Carl.
All right.